Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the online roundtable. My name is Rigo Jimenez, and I am very excited to partake in this event and to be able to discuss with, as well as our other fellow theater artists in the community, to be able to voice in their opinions, their stories, and see what we can be able to bring to this outcome after the event. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and bring everybody in here. If we can. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
How do you?
Hey. How is everybody?
They can hear us.
Excellent.
Hello.
Everybody hear each other well?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Alrighty, sweet. Well, without further ado, if each of you would like to introduce yourselves, let you tell a little bit about yourself, and then afterwards we'll get this going. Who wants to go first?
Oh, I will. Why not?
Alrighty.
Break the tension, break the ice. Why
There
not?
There you go.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Alonso Rodriguez. I am a native Oregonian. I graduated from the University of Oregon with a theater arts degree and have been involved with theater since I was very young. The first production that I ever saw was a community theater production involving my sister of Zombie Prom. And I wish I could still find that VHS of that recording to this day, because it honestly inspired me to get involved in the theater and find my place. So
Right.
I'm really excited to be here, especially with a lot of familiar faces, and have a really good discussion about the arts.
Definitely.
My name's Sabrina. Hi. I've been doing theater in this area for, I want to say, like 5 years. Been about 5 years. The first show that I did in the Valley was Rent with Ernie. And I've been a part of a lot of different organizations and been involved in a lot of social justice movements since I was really young, because of my mom and our family. So I'm kind of interested to see how the two worlds can kind of collide, for me at least, because I have, I care about the community a lot, like the local theater community. And I think there's a lot of stuff that, we could do if people, actually speak up and try and make some decisions and come together and try something new.
Absolutely.
So I'm kind of just here to see what people's ideas are, or what people's opinions are, and see who else is interested in having a conversation and about actually bringing kind of a healthy change to the Valley. So,
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'll go since I'm here. I'm Mike. I've been in the Valley for 5 years. I came here for school. I've worked at every theater in the Valley, and I helped run one of them. And I've been doing theater for about 10 years now. I do the technical side of things. So it's my intro.
There it is. What an intro.
I'll go next then.
Alrighty.
My name is Carolina Arias. I'm Costa Rican, and I've been doing theater for about 10 years now. I only have about a year living in the Rock Valley, so it's pretty new. And yeah, I'm really interested about knowing, for the people that maybe not all of you were born there. So how it is to work and how did you start working, in theater up there? Because actually right now I'm in Costa Rica. I just got here.
Oh, wow.
COVID situation. I decided that it was better to just come close to my family.
Definitely.
So yeah.
Be with the ones that you want to that mean the most to you, and kind of just be there in these turbulent times.
Yeah, exactly. I was basically alone in Oregon, so it was definitely a good idea to just move back here for for a while.
Definitely.
Am I the last one?
I think so. Is everybody?
you and
Oh, Luis
Yeah.
hasn't
And then
gone.
Luis.
I also
Yeah.
haven't gone, but it's okay, Ernie. You can go.
No,
Go for it,
by all means, go ahead.
All right. My name is Luis Garcia. I go by he, him. I am Peruvian, and I was born and raised in Orlando, Florida. I've been in the Rogue Valley now for 3 years, and I am a freelance lighting and video designer. And I've been here for 3 years. Today is actually my last day in the Rogue Valley.
We're gonna miss you.
Oh, we're gonna
Yeah,
miss
but-
her.
Yeah, my partner Carrie and I are moving back to Florida tomorrow
Mhm.
at 8 a.m. And
Crazy.
yeah, same with Carolina. We're leaving because of family. We want to
Yeah.
get closer to them, make sure everyone's okay. But yeah, I moved here because I got hired by OSF as their video technician. And then just this past year, I've been doing a lot of freelancing with a lot of theaters in the Rogue Valley and just been designing a lot. It's been fun. Yeah. And same with Sabrina. I'm really trying to bring in my social justice side that I grew up with into
Mhm.
this theater industry and see how I can help out, especially the next generation of artists, you know,
Definitely.
because we've gone through it and we now have to let them know that it's okay and we're building that road for them to make it easier for everyone. So definitely.
All right. Hi guys. My name is Ernie Rosales. I was born in California and actually moved to the Valley about 5 years ago. So I've been here doing theater for I've actually been doing theater for about 5 years. Moved to the Valley about 6 years, and I started doing theater actually in 2011 when I went to Chico State, and just been doing a lot of shows, basically throughout almost every theater here in the Valley as well. And I'm just really excited to be here, listen to you guys share stories and find ways that I can be a better ally. Kind of just listen to everyone and their stories and contribute to whatever I can in any way, because it's a really turbulent time right now.
Definitely.
And we just really need to be here for not only ourselves, but for an evolving world as well.
Definitely. Definitely. Alrighty. Well, with that being said, let's kind of go off with just with how everybody's current state of mind just been going, you know, within these past few months, honestly, just like with having 2020 just started and throughout now, you know, how's everybody been holding up, you know, just trying to keep a level head, so to speak.
I mean, I've been hanging in there, not really working a whole lot,
Right.
doing some stuff here and there. Still talk with my work a lot, but just kind of finding a lot of, you know, creative things to stay busy. I know I was one of many people that were working on a show that got canceled.
Yeah.
So that kind of sucked because we put in a lot of hard work and, you know, put in a lot of hard work learning an entire show and then not knowing for, you know, the span of a month and a half whether or not you're going to need to like go on. So like it was a really weird limbo feeling to be in. So that kind of sucked just because I feel like we need the arts now more than ever, but it's also not the safest thing to, you know, because so many people gather for the arts. So that's kind of, as an artist, that's kind of been like one of the harder things for me is that I'm not working, but I also don't have that outlet to, you know, to work into doing theater. So.
Yeah, it's difficult for all of us, and I'm with you on the same boat. Just not in the not like with a or like getting in the process of being productions. You know, I was, you know, like many of us here in the conference, we were getting ready to like start with read throughs or start with rehearsals and everything, and just not having it happen this year has really taken a hurt, especially for me, especially just, you know, because I wanted to be able to collaborate with everybody and be a part of a wonderful production and just kind of bring more smiles on everybody's faces, especially during these troubling times.
It takes a big toll on, I think, everybody's mental health.
Definitely.
Especially if, you know, you're an artist. This is what keeps our brains healthy, and this is what we use as our mental and physical outlet. So, yeah,
Exactly.
To me,
Exactly.
has been really weird actually, because I had to basically stop doing theater for a while before moving up there.
Mm-hmm.
And then it took me a few months to just start like
Right.
okay, now figuring out like how this work and how am I gonna try it, how am I gonna do it. And yeah, I was basically getting ready for shows up there, and then this happened. So I have been you know, kind of lost for about a year and a half now.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's been really difficult. And I don't know if it happened to you guys, but not only the COVID situation, but also with the Black Lives Matter movement,
Definitely.
you start like putting a lot of things in a different perspective. As an artist, it
Mhm.
happened to me like, okay, now that I think that it's more important to just, you know, speak out and everything, it's like we're just not able to do it. So it's been kind of hard for me. Like in the beginning, you know, maybe a few months ago, I was feeling a little bit like I don't know what to do, you know,
Right.
like I don't know if I'm able to do something even, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I'm changing a little bit. Like, okay, maybe there are things that I can do, you know, from here. So I'm trying to figure that out. But it was like, you know, the combination of the things that put you like in this weird state, like where you feel like super lost and also like sometimes hopeful and sometimes completely hopeless.
Right.
And I don't know, I've been like dealing with that like all the time.
Definitely. Well, let's go ahead and get through some of these questions right now. Let me double check over here. So, kind of just wanted to follow through with especially the recent events that have been happening through the Black Lives Matter and the Black community. Do we in theater we've done enough to really kind of bring the awareness for everybody in the community, especially with those that are patrons, especially with those who enjoy watching the theater because of the live theater? Do we think that there's been enough going on, especially recently, or do we feel like that we should be doing more? And if so, what ideas would you like to bring to the table to kind of get the message brought out to everybody? Because, you know, with social media going on, with everybody having, you know, electronic devices, there's so many exposure going out there, and with that it can definitely overwhelm the community and within ourselves as well to just like to be able to let in our voices. So how do you guys input with this question?
Well, I think personally that the answer is that we should always be doing more. That, you know, there's never like enough that we're doing. I think this is a time that we should really be looking at like just like tired and antiquated plays and literature that we're producing. Myself, I'm starting and kind of serving on a subcommittee for the Randall Theater to kind of keep that in tow and like look at like what we're producing, and if the inclusivity of it is something that, you know, we can be proud of, and that we can feel like everyone can be welcomed regardless of race, sex, gender, everything, you know. And I think that's something that has to come from the community first and come from a lot of different backgrounds and perspectives. But you know, it's hard because, you know, there's always the question of like, do we put on a classic problematic musical or play, or do we try to do something that is, you know, pushing the boundaries and maybe a little bit outside of what our patrons might be used to? And it's tough because, you know, a lot of people view a theater is a business, and
Definitely.
you know, at the end of the day, you have to look at the finances and like what's working and what's not. But
Mhm.
I always think that there's room for new voices and new works, and you know, just something bigger,
Right.
but bigger in the message that we're trying to send, and bigger in what we're trying to accomplish as a theater.
Mhm.
Because I mean, it's tired, and it a lot of people say it, but like the theater is really a second home for artists,
It is.
and we have to strive to make that true. You know, it should be somewhere that people can kind of come to, feel safe, feel heard, feel respected, feel represented.
Mhm.
You know, it's a humor is a defense mechanism I use a lot. But one thing, particularly in the Valley, and Rigo and Ernie, you can speak into this. There is a lot of just general, I don't know the exact word I want to use, but basically, we're confused for each other.
Right.
Being three people of color who have some similar characteristics and physical descriptions, but we're
Right.
not. And we try, and you know, we joke and we try to play it off as humor, but in our day and age, it gets tired. It gets tired, and it feels like you're not represented and you're not seen to be the individual you are.
Right.
And that's what gets frustrating for me, because like we're all accomplished artists. We all bring something very different to the table, and I think that should be recognized. Absolutely.
Ernie, did you want to follow up on that? Sorry, I didn't mean to
Oh,
interrupt.
yeah, I was going to jump onto that and kind of go back to the original question about whether or not either any of us feel like the community's been doing enough.
Mhm.
And David's right, like there's always more that we can be doing. But just to blatantly answer the question, I mean, me personally, I don't know, not since I've moved here. I've firsthand had experiences with just about, not with almost every theater, as far as, you know, racial profiling or, you know, calling people out. I've personally emailed and talked to, you know, people who are on the board for the different theater companies. And I've, you know, questioned and I've sent concerning letters when there's, you know, a less than appropriate casting of ethnicity that happens every single season in multiple theaters. And so I think one of the biggest issues is that moving forward, I think now that this is really happening, I hope that people are more comfortable speaking up, because there's just been so much silence and so much complacency with what happens. And I think that's a really big problem. And that's how we kind of stay lingering in the past rather than moving forward. Because a lot of the, you know, simple excuses that, you know, I always hear is, you know, the demographic, like what David was saying, like the demographic is predominantly older Caucasian people. But then we have to start brainstorming of ways that we can get around that. Then, you know, there are so many young people in the Valley who would be interested in seeing what we're doing. And so that's one of those things where we might, you know, to kickstart this process, we need to go out and we need to initiate something ourselves. You know, like we need to go out and we need to find those people who don't know that we're here. Because a lot of people who aren't even interested in theater, you know, it's not until they go and see a show and they're like, oh my God, I loved that. And then they start coming back, you know.
Mhm.
And a lot of the same excuses of, oh, well, we had auditions and everybody could come. Everybody had the opportunity to come. But they still go, you know, continue with the show that they don't have a cast for. And so, and again, that people then resort to being silent and just letting it happen. So I think just holding ourselves accountable, accepting when, you know, we mess up ourselves, when we, you know, create an error, but then being able to change it moving forward and try not to make those same mistakes in the future.
Following on that, there's also like, and also with the auditions, like with the auditions that you've mentioned before, there's also opportunities for everybody to get the whatever parts that they're wanting to look for. But how do each of us feel personally when we see community theaters reach out to us, let us know that, hey, we've, each of us have done a wonderful job with our auditions. But as soon as we see the callbacks, they've also put us in different roles that were, that everyone's kind of accustomed to, just being like, oh, well, it works because this person is a person of color, so let's go ahead and put them in a box. How does each of us personally feel about that? Because for me, it feels like everything that I've put into, throughout the years collaborating with different artists, it almost kind of puts a really hard damper on who I am and what I want to represent in the community theater. And I just wanted to hear from how each of you as well felt throughout, your experiences when something like this has happened, where you were being put into a box.
I'm going to speak on behalf of Tech because I've never auditioned in the Rogue Valley, but being behind the scenes and kind of seeing how it all works, it honestly feels, I'm going to be blatantly honest, it just feels cheap. It just feels like they're taking the safe route and they aren't willing to take risks on actually developing pieces that audience can connect to. And to add on to what David and oh my God,
Sabrina.
I am so sorry, Sabrina. I just completely
David.
blanked.
We all look alike.
I know.
You
I
got the
guess
important
do.
name down. You're
I
fine.
know. Sorry. I just saw your name is
Look at the
Mike
bottom left corner.
on,
Oh, no.
on Zoom. So I'm like, wait, no, that's the wrong person. But yes, to add on to what Sabrina and David said, it's to add on to your last question that you had. I think the big problem that we don't acknowledge, not just in the Rogue Valley, but just around the country in regards to theater, is it's a very bourgeois industry. It's a very elitist thing. And it's really interesting because growing up, I had no clue what theater was. Like being a young Peruvian male, my parents always told me I was either going to be some form of doctor or a teacher of some kind. And I had no clue what the arts was. My dad would bring artists from Peru to sing and stuff every so often, but that's the closest I ever got. And then I randomly encountered a theater production in middle school, and that's what really sparked my interest. So what really needs to happen is I think theaters need to acknowledge the sheer fact that, yeah, theater is expensive, but we need to find a way to make it accessible for everyone in the community. Yeah, there's a lot of older white people that live in the Rogue Valley, but there's also a large community of Mexican Americans and Mexican immigrants that live in this area. So I feel like theaters as a whole need to acknowledge the demographics that they live in and not take the easy route in hiring and staffing and putting actors that they know people feel let the audience know that they would be accepted to acknowledge the story that they're telling, versus let's do a piece that is about the people in our actual community. Because not only does that develop a new piece that's new, it also allows new people that don't know anything about theater to acknowledge the fact that, oh, this is a story about me that I can possibly understand. So yeah, I just, that's the big fight I've been going through all of this is I just don't want to see, and I'm just going to be blatantly honest, I just don't want to see Oklahoma for the 50th time in the world.
But I also want to say, like Louise pointing out what you said in there, that it's actually, I think to me, just mind blowing is we keep talking about how the demographic is predominantly older Caucasian people. And when you think about that, it's true. Whenever you go to a theater, who do you see in the audience? It is always mostly, if not all, of that demographic. And to me, like that's something that just like blows my mind. And then like also to put it into like with a specific example, I've lived here 5 years and I've played a maid once, and I've been cast as a maid or offered the role of a maid, I think 4 or 5 times. So that adds up to at least once a season. And I've turned them down all of them. And I've only taken one. So just an example.
I think to add on to that, Sabrina, the unfortunate reality of why we see the demographics of patrons be older white Caucasians is because it's the accessibility of theater.
They can afford it.
People can't afford it. I myself cannot afford the opportunity to go see like Hamilton on Broadway, but the nice thing is that recently And, just a few days ago, we were able to see a high quality film production. And that's something that I think that just needs to be normalized, is that there's a whole range of people you can include in theater who never would have considered it until they're able to see a Broadway style show or musical. And
Right.
you can inspire all these other artists if you just give the accessibility. If you just open up the archives, there's archives of 4K resolution productions that have been filmed and
Yeah.
just sit there for no reason except to just have it as an archive. And I think it's just a shame that we don't think about that first. Is that how can we open up the theater to many other people, especially those of lower income, or I know plenty of people who they use the theater as a way to escape from home, and make it their second home, and it really helped them. It helped me at times, to be able to come into a place where I knew I could be supported and recognized for what I was contributing to the group. But yeah, sorry, I don't want to hijack the whole thing.
No. This is definitely great. This is what we wanted to bring everybody in, just be able to voice in and just let, just tell the truth and basically just let everybody know, hey, this is what's been going on for each of us personally. This has been going on for some time, and we have a platform where we can be able to voice in everything that's been going on. So
absolutely,
why not have the opportunity to do that? So thank you.
Yeah. But to answer your question from my perspective, yeah, it puts me in a box. And it's really frustrating that I think the issue is that maybe some directors think that if I do put a person of color in the leading role, can the audience identify with them? And that's the problem when you have patrons who are older Caucasians. They maybe don't want to see that, which is a cold reality. But again, if we can work on the accessibility, if we can bring in a larger range of audiences and people of color, they want that. As a young boy, I always wanted to see myself represented as a superhero or in the movies. You always want to see that. So that, and then when you do, it means that much more. Especially hell, when Coco came out years back, that was such a good example of feeling myself and the culture that my dad comes from represented. And I can feel something pull in my heart, knowing that that's me. I can see myself up there and represented, and that means so much more to everyone than they think it does.
Not only that, but also to kind of follow through with that, but the amount of time and the amount of resources that everybody puts in, especially a movie like Coco, where they really took the time to really gravitate all of the culture, everything that represents the Mexican community, whether it was through song, whether it was through hard work, whether it was through just the culture itself that each and every one of us have shared with throughout our families from generations and generations. That also definitely shows that you matter and that you appreciate what we bring to the table, and to see that on the big screen is a huge compliment to everybody in the community. And I think like that, like Coco, like other movies as that, if there are those in the higher power that are given opportunities and are taking the time to really do their resource, I tip my hat to them. But I feel like there's still a lot more that we, like you said beforehand, there's a lot more that we can do, throughout the community and throughout the nation out there. So what experiences do you guys have you guys, have overcome where it seemed very hostile and there was no, basically your back was against the wall, whether it was in through community theater or through just a personal experience yourself, based upon racism, based upon sexism, based upon any type of just uncomforting situation how did you guys feel, or better yet, what advice would you like to give, especially to those in the younger generation who are going to experience, if not are experiencing, these situations, not only as just artists, but as just people of color?
Um,
I'm sorry.
I
First.
well, going off of what Sabrina was saying, the idea that sometimes as actors or people of color, we are given those opportunities that shoehorn us, or kind of just go off of like, well, you look this certain way, so this is what we're going to offer you. The fact that she's had to do this like 4 or 5 times, it's like you have the power to, like, if you're ever uncomfortable or you feel like it's not contributing to you as you wish it could, like, you're allowed and you should be able to be safe to say no. Like, you shouldn't let what you look like determine what you're given. And I know that, and oh, go ahead.
Or I'm agreeing with you. And I also think that goes for people who are Caucasian. They also have the choice to turn down a role if it is not appropriate to your ethnicity.
Sure.
Because that is a way that you can be an ally. And I would like to see more of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, and then and the thing is, like, hearing that's been a regular occurrence for Sabrina, or for anyone really. The fact that it's still happening is something that a lot of people need to realize. It's like, if this is continuing to happen, then maybe we don't have the ability or the right or the excuse to do a story with this character that can't be done, because we do really need to look at not only the demographic of our audience, we need to look at what we have in our acting pool. Or, like, don't do the effort to make these characters or shows that need these people, or feel free to think outside the box and give those parts to people of color if they're, if it's a good choice acting wise. It's like, let these people shine. Like David said, like, will this audience want to relate to this person if they don't look like them? It's like, maybe we should give the opportunity for them to see it and see how that shouldn't matter.
Definitely.
Yeah, actually what I was gonna say was something really similar, because I think that what we should do is just, take our shot. Like, for example, when I moved up there, the first thing that I thought was like, yeah, my English is just, like, I know people understand what I'm saying and things like that, but I have a really thick accent still. And I was like, this is a funny thing, actually. In Costa Rica, people have like my hair color, my skin color, but when you move up there, it's like, you're from Central America because you're white, so one of the things that people were telling me, like, for sure you're gonna have a shot, because you don't look like them. But the thing is that I was thinking is, but I am one of them, first of all. Mm-hmm. Second, I know that when I start speaking, they're gonna know that I'm not, like, that different from them. But the thing is that the only thing that you can really do is just try it. And you try it, and I say try it, and I just do it, because I know that it's a scary thing to do. When you feel like you might be rejected just for being somebody of color or something like that, is scary. And the thing is that if you feel like you need more of that representation, if you feel like more of that empowerment, maybe you're the one that have to do it. Maybe you're the one that have to just speak out, and maybe you're the one that have to figure out how can you start like your own. As we were saying, doing theater is expensive. It's not like you can just bring any idea and just do it. But if you don't try it, then how are we expecting things to change? That's the thing, you know, like another thing that I wanted to say earlier is that I don't know, it's more like a question. I don't know if it happens there. For example, here in Costa Rica, people usually think that theater is not for everybody. Like more educated people or with a higher income are the people that go to see theater. So of course, the people do theater, they wanna, you know, try to do things for that kind of public. But the thing is, it's not about money all the time. You know, it's not because less educated people can afford to pay, you know, to go and see theater. A lot of times it's just because they just don't feel like they belong. And it's the same thing, you know, like I thought a lot of time, like maybe I just don't belong, you know, in doing theater in Oregon or something. But you just have to do it. You just have to do it, you know, find your ways to
Definitely.
open space for you.
Definitely. I agree with Carolina, and thank you for sharing about that. I also feel like that definitely has a huge impact to our generation and to the younger generations as well, just to kind of feel bombarded with all these comments saying, well, you know, we're not expecting you to show up in Hollywood because, you know, we barely see people like you being in that community or being in that, you know, demographic. I personally, you know, if it weren't for, you know, the school just being able to reach out and having an opportunity for people, for students of colors, to watch a show in OSF, like I've gotten 2 or 3 opportunities, both in middle school and in high school, where I got to, you know, watch the shows at OSF with a few other students of color and be able to interact with the artists as well, and just to hear their story and to hear their struggles and to hear, you know, what they've been through is so impactful. And you know, I thank them, and I thank, you know, the school for giving that opportunity. I feel with that, more should do that as well. Like more should find ways to get that exposure to every, you know, to every schools, to every communities, whether it is, you know, something off Broadway or on Broadway, you know, being able to do workshops and things like that. I feel like if we can be able to push a lot of just having everybody be a part of it, regardless of money, regardless of race, regardless of who you want to represent yourself as, you know, I feel like the people in higher power definitely need to step up. And with that following, do you feel with, especially in the Rogue Valley or in other communities, do you feel like they themselves have acknowledged these issues, especially with Black Lives Matter, and with the police brutality? Do you feel they've acknowledged, if not addressed, or have done anything to kind of bring a light of hope that, you know, even after the end of this, you know, we can definitely come together for this? And if not, what can we do?
I don't think so. I think a lot of the theaters have done the absolute bare minimum, if not anything. And I understand that probably a lot of it stems from the fear of losing patrons. But I wish that the theaters were doing more. Like I said, silence is deadly. So unfortunately, it happens a lot here. But also going back to what Rigo was saying, and kind of like what Luis, everybody was saying, it's really interesting too, kind of hearing a little bit of everybody's, you know, story of how they got into theater. I feel like they're not all the same story, but they are kind of similar. Like I would not have been in theater. Like I never ever would have gotten involved in theater if my school hadn't been doing West Side Story. And the teacher was specifically going out trying to find kids of color to do the show. And that's how I stumbled into theater. But if they weren't doing West Side Story, then I probably would not be doing theater.
Right.
But I think that's really interesting too. Like you don't, because it's not very accessible for a lot of kids. So
Yeah, I
So-
agree.
Sorry,
Yeah, I
Henry.
just think, oh, you're good, man. I just think with it's right now, it's just kind of been like a small statement for a lot of the theaters. I know right now there's not a whole lot of action that can be done because COVID is it's shutting down theaters. Like a lot of theaters are just barely trying to hang on with whatever they can to keep afloat, whether it's canceling the season and all that. But yeah, I definitely agree. A whole lot more can be done. What could be done currently with the COVID situation? That could be. I'm not sure exactly what that could be right now, but definitely once if COVID were to end sooner and BLM and the police brutality things are still going on, like we can definitely find more ways to do more rather than because statements are great, but actions speak louder. And also with to go back with the accessibility, I feel like in the time that I've been here doing shows, the times that I've counted that high school groups or any school group that wasn't specifically a patron, a family member that have come to see a show, I can probably count on like one hand. It's like that's a lot of shows in a lot of years, and I think that's also something that the local theaters themselves can kind of look into, trying to find a way to bring in like even if it's like 5 kids at a school that are interested in theater, like who's interested, who would want to come see, who would want to come watch this story, to let you know that there is something out there for you, like, and it could be a stepping stone for school, for Broadway, for Hollywood, whatever. Like I think we can also make an effort to make that accessible to people. What I really admired about the Randall for a long time was the fact that they said, you know what, whatever this show's going to cost me, you can give me 25 cents and I'll let you in the door. Like the pay what you can was a really incredible tool. And even so to the point where they were able to get a good fan base and sell out their original house first. And unfortunate that they had to lose the first street space. But I always did admire that this could be one of the most expensive shows that we're going to put on, or a show that's probably going to be taboo to a lot of the general population that you would most likely see at a Camelot or OSF audience. We're going to make this accessible to you with whatever you're willing and able to give us. And like, that's a big thing that I really admired about that system.
Definitely.
Yeah, to answer your question, Rigo, yeah, I agree with a lot of people. I think theaters are doing the bare minimum right now to kind of just slap a bandage on the situation and being like, you know what? Yeah, we are having issues, but here's a statement that says hashtag Black Lives Matter. And yeah, it's just scratching the surface. I think one big thing that they can definitely do to acknowledge that they've been focusing on a specific group of individuals from their theater companies is to broaden out. I'm always about helping the next generation of artists. That's my whole thing. That's why I want to eventually become a professor so I can help out high school students, because we've all been in that situation. There's always been that one person in our life that has inspired us to pursue this field. So one big thing that I've always been fighting for in all these theaters is paid internships. There are a lot of people in this community and in being in the POC community that can't afford free internships. And not like a good majority of these internships then go to individuals that can't afford living out of pocket and being able to spend full summers at theater companies during summer stocks with help from their family or themselves or whatnot. So, one big solution that theaters can do around here to help broaden out their audience base and also their staff base is to do more things like the Rando, the pay what you can do, because not only does that make it affordable for a new group of individuals to come in, you're also broadening out the age group
Mhm.
people that will be coming to theater now. You know, like we mentioned, there's a lot of old Caucasian people that come see our shows. The reason why is because they can afford it. And honestly, the big reason, like David said, theater has now become a business. And who's going to be donors? The people that can afford it. And who are those individuals? Are the people that can afford to pay tickets. So let's focus on those individuals that are seeing our shows, because they'll be the ones putting back money into ourselves. So instead of focusing on that idea of, if we get more people in this demographic and getting more money towards us, let's just take that risk and build our full demographic so that we can get more people, so that then more people can come in and then they can tell other people, hey, this is a really great place. And that's how you build a really strong foundation and build a really strong fan base, like Ernie said with the Randall. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot of work to be done, and a lot of statements that I've been reading have just been okay.
Definitely. Did
I
anybody
think
else? Well, go for it.
Touching back on your other question, I think the what advice I can offer, this next generation is, as a playwright myself, write articles, write plays, write with your voice. We need more voices. The the thing I found most frustrating working in the Valley is that in roles that I felt that I put in like so much time and effort into, and I was, I was grateful to even like be chosen. I didn't feel recognized in reviews, which sounds shallow, but like I would see every other person who wasn't a person of color or the rest of my cast commented on, and then I was just forgotten.
Mhm.
And it leaves that burning question of like, why? Is it because I look different? Is it because they had no interest in seeing what I had to bring to the table? And that can hurt an entire generation of artists who want to be recognized and for their work and for what they do. And so that's why it's so great with like theater in Oregon, with Paul starting seeking other voices to write about theater, because in the Valley you don't get a lot of that. It's the same few people writing the same reviews and about the same people over and over and over again. And we need more voices. We need more writers. We need more everything. And especially, tying into what we're talking about now, especially in this day and age, and with what's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement, we need more voices. We need to see more articles about tired language that needs to be expelled from the theater. We need to see more perspective on what it's like to work in the theater and how we can be more inclusive and accessible,
Right.
whether it's working on offering like pay what you want rates, or reaching out to the schools, because there's a whole generation and a whole bunch of kids who want to be involved, but like Carolina says, they don't know that they can be, because they think it's something that you have to be a certain income bracket to be a part of, but you don't. Theater can be so inclusive, and we have to remind ourselves that that's the point. That is the point, is that that's the point. And the other thing is that I think what is the harmful misconception about the theater is that the actor's sole purpose is to benefit and serve the audience and nothing else.
Right.
They think that it's your job. You have to show up. You have to entertain us. That's it. That they think that there's nothing that we're getting and benefiting from or working through on stage. It's a very vulnerable process, and it requires some of the bravest people I know to get up there night after night and expose themselves, expose their souls, basically. So yeah, I just write more, be involved, start a subcommittee, do something that's a little bit outside your comfort zone, because no change has ever happened, and the comfort of your couch.
I will say, to add to that, David, talking about just needing more voices to say something, but we need, I'd say, honest voices. I think
Yes,
people are slowly starting to, write reviews more, and we're getting more people coming into the community, but I feel like people are still in this, scared to be honest with their opinions. I'm not saying write a review and be like, oh my gosh, that person sucks, like they were horrible. No, but give good, solid criticism and your own personal opinion. and don't be afraid to call out the director or the company or question their choices publicly, because I've questioned a lot of directors and theaters privately, and not once has that I think ever made a difference. So it's like, if we have that power to be writers and to kind of give our knowledge, because I think more actors should be writing the reviews, because we know what it takes. Like, we do it on stage ourselves. So it's like, I know that when she's dancing and singing at the same time, I know how hard that is. So it's like, I think it's great that the artist should be writing more reviews, but I'd say don't be afraid to really question, the show choice, the casting choice, or, why are they doing it in this time of the season? What's this specific theater been going through? Like, I don't know, just being more honest and not writing a review just to have it out there and have it be
Just for
some
publicity.
opinions here and there, but not really saying what you wish you were saying, and going back on your article and editing and taking out all the things that might stir the pot.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I also feel that, wanting to go back with what David mentioned about having the schools find ways to get it accessible, have the accessible, way to really reach out for the students of color to really feel and get and grab that exposure of theater. One example is that OSF, I was, thankful to be a part of in last season as an understudy for La Comedia Veres. What they were doing was that they did a tour where they went around throughout the Rogue Valley, wanting to go out through the Latino community and really show them that exposure. Not only that, but really, really wanting to also show that theater knows, no color. Theater knows, like, it doesn't, what it represents is wanting to tell a story, but wanting to tell the story from the heart. And seeing that tour go around, not only that, but having it, transcribed into a bilingual show, and having each actor go from speaking English to speaking Spanish, go from sharing that little culture through the community is wonderful. I feel that more and more community theater should definitely look into, ways of bringing exposure like that. Do you guys also do you guys also have other inputs as to ways that community theaters could be able to reach out and give exposure, especially for the younger generation?
Yeah. My big thing is I hate when producers and directors are like, we can't find a play that is like Hispanic enough or African American enough and stuff. And it's like,
Right.
it really, it's like, it's like, oh, but some other company's doing In the Heights already. So like, we don't know what other Hispanic shows going on, but like, there's a lot of playwrights out there, that are local. There are playwrights around the country that would love to see their work in any theater. And I'm really enjoying the movement that's going on right now on Facebook and over the internet in general. We have the We See You movement, where we have a lot of artists that are people of color that are finally acknowledging all the issues that have been happening. Not only that, I'm really enjoying these people of color theater groups that are occurring on Facebook, sharing like people of color work, and letting producers and directors know, hey, there's more than just these 4 shows that you can produce. There is a whole list that you can work with. And, it really makes me as like a Peruvian and Hispanic really proud and like excited to be a person of color, being able to see those shows on the stage. For a long time in my life, I went by Luis Garcia because I was in a predominantly white community, and I felt very embarrassed when people would mess up my name. And it wasn't until I started working here in the Rogue Valley when I saw Mojada like a couple of years ago, and being able to be like, whoa, there can be like Latinx pieces on the screen, like in the audio, like on stage, and being able to be like, oh, I can relate to that. So there's a vast list out there that, I think it's about time that, there should be no more excuses. to be like, we just don't have the versatility of shows to pick from people of color. So
How did they mess up Garcia?
don't even get me started.
I don't know how else I would say it.
Garcia. It's Garcia.
Garcia?
Oh,
Garcia.
Oh.
I face the same thing, and it's understandable because there are multiple ways to spell Rodriguez, but I don't know why it's so hard for someone to just ask me, what is this correct spelling?
Right.
You know, what is your preferred? And I think the same with you, Luis. I just used my first and last name all the time because I, you know, was in a predominantly like white area, and it took me until like college to really like reclaim like my heritage and feeling comfortable to talk about it, which is why I use my full name, because I think that like my middle name is such a like a piece of like who I am, and to hear it like fully aloud and said by people is just feels right.
Definitely.
Well, it's funny because a lot of the times in the years that I've been doing theater, it's not that I've been shoehorned to do a Latino or person of color exclusive role. I've always just been I'm a type.
Yeah.
I'm a character actor.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember a long time ago when I was talking to an advisor, and this came from a place of like, I'm just giving you advice because I know what type of actor you are. You're not an Ernesto, you're an Ernie. And like, looking back at it, it's like, yes, I understand. Like, when you think of Ernesto, you probably think of like, you know, the tall, dashing looking guy with the nice trimmed mustache and whatever. You're not thinking of like me. And then like, and also it was just easier for me because I naturally go by Ernie since I was born. But it's also like, I look at my name and it's an interesting combination. I have a very versatile first name, whereas my last name is very specific to who I am in my culture. And I think that just makes it easier for people to just say like, that's Ernie Rosales versus that's Ernie Rosales. So yeah, it's just kind of something that it's always been in the back of my mind, and hearing everyone talk about their names and who we are and our identities.
Yeah, I get that a lot of times, especially just coming from with my with just my first name. For the most part, like a bunch of people, the minute I mention my first name, their assumption is, oh, Rico with a C. Okay, yeah, totally. And then they just have this confidence that they're just like, yeah, I totally understand the origin of that name. I basically know exactly who you are because I said it out loud. And to hear that just really, at first it really upset me to just kind of have to go through the process over again and being able to be like, no, let me go ahead and correct you. It's actually with a G. And even having people coming up to me and ask, was like, why does your last name have a J and not an H? Because it has that H sound, things like that. And like, and to follow and to go through with what both David and Ernie have said, you know, I've also really, you know, took a hard look at my name and being able to be like, no, this is, you know, who I am. And I want to be able to represent not only who I am, but to represent the people who have been here before me, and to be able to kind of bring the generation of, as a Latinx American citizen, to just like be able to be a part of the world, a more diverse world, so to speak. Does anybody have any questions or any inputs that they would like, in terms of, you know, whether it is through the community or through personal experiences or things like that, or something to follow up through?
I guess the way that I see this is just kind of like at least I hope that this is kind of just a starting point. You know, I think having things like this would be really great in the future moving forward, where we can have this space to make decisions. You know, we can work together. Like if we had a small group, even just like right now, if we came up with like a proposal to give to a couple of the theaters, like here are shows that are written by Native, Latinas, and like people of color in general, like written or directed or created, like, just going to the theaters and be like, hey, if you can't come up with some ideas, here's some ideas that we have.
Right.
And so I was like, I hope that this could become more of like a brainstorming type way to
Definitely
push the community in a more inclusive direction. Because I mean, even just talking right now is, it sounds like we can all slowly start seeing the vision that we want and coming up with the ideas in our head. But then it's just about putting that into action.
Right.
So.
Definitely. All right. Well, yeah. Well, let me go ahead and just follow up, see if we've kind of touched on most of the bases here with the roundtable. I actually wanted to follow through with what you said, Sabrina, about brainstorming. How, like, I feel like also if we do more of these and like kind of have everybody feel, everybody be a part of it, and not necessarily come into like a huge conference where there's like 43 people trying to voice in their opinions and everything. But I feel like if we could be able to just like kind of go through with small different groups, not wanting like a weekly basis, but just kind of setting up a time to just kind of like brainstorm, I definitely think is a really good idea to just, really have everybody be a part of something and really wanting to bring that change in the community, whether it's through a small group and then gradually going through a movement,
Well, I mean, if it's okay with you, I have kind of a little idea as far as that. Depending on who here wants to come back and have another discussion, I think a really good way to make sure that not just our voices are being heard, but since we have a little platform to use, I was thinking of just going out and like asking my friends and friends of my friends and just people that I know in the community, asking them, what are questions that you have or what are suggestions that you have?
Definitely.
And bring it back to this little, discussion, and just keep track of them, write them down, bring them back the next time, and, and ask them whether or not, would you like me to use your name in the discussion, or would you like to remain anonymous?
Or if you would like to be a part of the discussion.
Yeah. But I think you're right. Probably shouldn't have a ton of people, which is why I'm trying to make it more as inclusive as possible without before we find the sense of direction that we want to go in.
Definitely.
But I think that would be kind of a good way for all of us to kind of go out in our own directions and spread, parts of the conversation, and just figure out what other people's ideas are too.
Definitely. How does everybody else feel about that as well? And if there's anything other inputs that you also want to add into, please feel free to say.
I'd be really interested in Luis and hearing what more your ideas are about finding programs. I think that was you that was talking about just different ideas and programs of getting the theater out to kids of color.
Yeah.
Or finding ways that we can get more of that audience included.
Yeah, so a big thing I've been trying to hope can happen is, these summer camps that theaters host for kids to have these art classes throughout the summer, are paid, obviously, and it's very difficult for a lot of people who kind of have access to these classes. I think a cool firework, cool. I think a cool thing that theaters can do is, and OSF kind of does something like this, where they do school tours, where they have artists that go to different schools around just Oregon and the West Coast in general. I think it'd be really cool if with a joint collaboration between not just, with all the Rogue Valley theaters, they can come up with like a pool of artists that can work together, and then they can do these small school tours that can, they can go to different schools around the Rogue Valley where they can, really promote art, and really promote theater. There's a lot of elementary schools that, kind of do something very similar with OSF already here. Why not broaden that to the whole theater in Rogue Valley? Because, at the end of the day, my whole thing is, if you can get one kid become motivated to do theater or any form of art, that one kid would become super passionate, and then that is basically the next pool of artists that will start to grow to the next generation. So yeah, I feel like and I think another thing too is promote not just acting but also tech, because I feel like a lot of, especially like for Latinx people, acting isn't really a way to go, but like I grew up building a lot of things in my family, so I use my carpentry skills to go into theater. So there's a lot of real life work outside of theater that can relate to theater in some way. So there's definitely programs that can help bridge that gap between personal things that you grew up working with and any sort of theater field. So
Definitely.
yeah,
I like that. Well said. Alrighty. Well, I think we should wrap up with just one last question. It's very difficult having to converse with someone who has not much of an exposure to different communities, especially with people of color. If there is one message that you could be able to give out to those, whether they are on one side or another, what message would it be? Whether you want to input it with theater or with a personal experience, or just you representing as Latinx, as a person of color, like what, in the end, what message would you like to share with the world, you personally, especially with everything that's been going on?
Well, I learned something actually from my first professional job in theater. The director told me something that I will never forget. And it's like, if you have the chance of people to see you and to hear you, you better say something important. And that just stick with me like forever. And thinking about that, I will ask people, I think the hardest thing is for people to want to listen what you gotta say, because it's not like we want, more parts for laughing people, and we want more laughing place to be on. Not just because we want to be, there and we have more chances, but also because we have things to say.
Mm-hmm.
And we have things to say not only to give that opportunity for other Latin or people of color to be represented, but also because the things that we can say through art can basically change the world. So we want to be here. Just please give us a chance.
I like that. Yeah. I'm basically giving the floor to everybody. If anybody has anything else to say other than that.
Honestly, this has been my whole thing throughout all of this is, for a long time, people have been afraid to have these tough conversations about not just about the Black Lives Matter movement, but just the concept of race and class and just every issue that is going on right now in our country. But what I want to say to them is the gate's open. So use this opportunity to finally have these conversations. Don't be afraid to just piss off someone.
Right.
It's better to have the conversation and have a conversation between two people versus you kind of worrying what other people might think about your opinions and just keeping to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Just have the tough conversations, be open, and at the end of the day, as long as you're hearing the other person's opinion on what's going on, I feel like that is a much better foundation and a great next step to hopefully start bridging that gap between all these issues that are happening right now, not just in theater, but in the world in general.
Yeah.
I would say, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, David. No, you're fine.
Short and sweet. Theater gives us an amazing tool to put ourselves in other people's shoes for an hour, 2 hours, however long the production is. Use that outside the theater too. it really doesn't take much to just stop and listen to someone else's perspective and hear where they're coming from, because I think Louise is right. Now is the time to have the tough conversations. Now is the time to, reach out to people and say, like, enough's enough. There's so much more worth fighting for, and there's so much that, we only have so much time, and why waste it not being proactive and not speaking up for yourself, reclaiming your name, reclaiming who you are, and presenting yourself to people as someone who other people can, look up to.
I think going through this whole process for me, like, I'm a really big history lover. And so for me, I like learning about history, but I know that's not everybody's cup of tea. And I've been hearing a lot of people saying, like, well, we can't keep lingering on the past. But I think that now is like such a great time to really study the past and learn, just to inform ourselves of how we got here. And you hear a lot of, like, learn from the past so you don't make the same mistakes. I think right now is a really good time to just inform ourselves, educate ourselves about the past, so that way we can understand the present and figure out a better way to move forward, because it is still crazy that we're having to have these conversations at all. But this is where we're at, and I feel like if we're able to do that, acknowledge the past and try and figure out new ways to work towards the future, then we might not be like a lot of the older generations that have such a hard time moving forward, like with theater, with movies, with music, like the whole idea of, like, our grandparents so upset when they hear us blasting like rap or rock music or something like that, like I know somebody, his parents, he's an older guy, and he was a teenager during the Beatles, and his parents were like appalled at the Beatles. But nowadays, like, that's completely different. But we're gonna keep pushing, and we're gonna keep progressing. And so it's like we just have to keep progressing with things, and we can't just like be so comfortable in one place. And I think history is a really big part of that, and that's kind of one of my big things that I've really been thinking a lot about, is like, how can I keep progressing and moving forward with everyone else?
I agree, definitely.
Just going off of what I'm seeing in the world and on Facebook threads and just in general, don't confuse your specifically with the whole thing right now with masks and health. It's like, don't confuse your rights with selfishness. It's the thing that's just really just, and then, like, also with conversations, we're posting these things, we're letting our feelings known. It's not an invitation for you to come in and put your own little personal bias on it and say that we're stupid or that we're wrong or we're not seeing the whole picture. Like, give us your side. We'll have a conversation about it. Don't just be dismissive. Don't just say things to hurt another person or because it doesn't fully align with yourself. That's the whole point of a conversation or even a debate, where here's an issue, here's what I think, here's what you think. Like, if we can find middle ground, cool. If we're going to end up calling each other names and damning each other, or you're just going to be going around saying that you're stupid or you're a sheep or anything, it's like, that's like, I understand what you feel like your rights are, what your personal fear is going to be from all this, but don't be selfish. I just, like, don't destroy relationships because you just think that you have to be right all the time.
Right.
Privilege at its finest.
Definitely. To follow through with that, also just don't ignore that each of us are representing this country in a way. We are all hardworking people wanting to make a name for ourselves or wanting to make a difference in our lives and wanting to, be able to kind of pass along, our teachings or our life lessons or our stories through the younger generations as we pass. I also want to reach out and say, you know, even after all the struggles that each of us have faced with, even when life has put us through some of the strangest positions, especially in today, right now with this whole pandemic, with the whole Black Lives Matter movement, with, just everybody being on the edge, to see and to get that exposure of everybody coming together as one, as as human beings, to be able to stand up for injustice, stand up for inequality, to stand up for bigotry and everything else. There is hope. Don't give up on that hope. There's always going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, no matter what. And with that being said, I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank David, Luis, Carolina, Sabrina, Mike, Ernie, and Rachel, who's also in the background. Hi, Rachel. And I also want to thank Paul for giving us the opportunity to have this discussion and to be able to have everybody watching on YouTube Live to hear what each of us want to bring to the table and what each of us want to progress from this. And I hope that we can definitely make more out of this. I would love to, have more roundtables like this going on with all of you and with a bunch of other people who also want to voice in, and maybe even get some exposure and see if we can have a discussion where we can invite, people from the board of directors or the directors themselves, production managers, things like that, people from different departments of theater, and see what we can brainstorm and what we can be able to create out of this.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that being said, again, thank you for everybody for being in the round table. I appreciate all of you. You guys are wonderful and beautiful people.
Thank you, Rigo.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I hope. Yeah. Thank you. I hope everyone stay safe. We'll get through this no matter what. I love you guys.
All right.
You guys too.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so
Bye.
much.
Nice to see you,
have a
everyone.
wonderful night, everybody.
You
Miss
too.
you all.
Bye.